is with her always, in all ways. Our point person for Principle 2, I Am, was Marianne Menard. Marianne told us that she started her time at Unity by wanting to feel. Her desire led her to her conscious connection with her inner spark of divinity. At Principle 3, I Create, Summer Ricketts wrote, quote, "We don't get a choice about being creators. We're choosing everything that comes into our experience. The paintbrush is in our hand," end quote. Deborah Thomas reminded us that Principle 4, I Pray, is all about answered prayer. When we cannot at first see the answer is yes, she invited us to dig deeper for our true prayer, our soul's prayer. This morning, Cindy Bunch is our guide for our final talk in this series, Principle 5, I Live. Cindy is definitely a shining light here at Crystal Coast Unity. Everybody knows Cindy. She makes a point of greeting new friends and old each Sunday with a smile on her face and love radiating from her heart. Her enthusiasm and gratitude for life are the perfect match for her board service as membership and outreach lead. Without making a big deal of it, Cindy also offers her artistic sense for our building. As you look around the sanctuary, the peaceful blend of colors and textures are in large measure due to her vision. We are extraordinarily blessed that Cindy Bunch chooses to be part of our community. Who better than Cindy to introduce Principle 5? Cindy?
Wow. That's a lot to live up to. Wow.
But you did.
Woo.
Reporting the truth, darling.
Start. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
God is good and all-powerful. People are good. I create my life with my thoughts. Prayer and meditation keep me centered. I live the truth I know. Once upon a time, long ago, my life was in the pits. And then accident, or God, whichever way you'd like to call it, brought unity into my life in the form of a well-placed daily word. That event began the cycle that I'm here to share with you today. In those days, my insides were in shambles, while life on the outside was totally caught up in my human drama. Babies, an ex-husband, financial insecurity, betrayal, work pressures, etc. Then unity appeared. I became acquainted with the 5 foundational principles, and slowly the pain in my heart began to heal as I began to practice the truth of these principles. Now, it wasn't nearly as simple or as quick as the statement that I just made. Trusting a set of beliefs that made room for God to intervene, believing in the idea that my thinking had helped to create my situation, trusting that prayer and meditation would help, didn't seem like a quick fix to my troubles. Yet, as each situation arose, I tried to face it through the lens of unity, and I witnessed it dissolve in God's light and grace. My awareness grew, my faith grew, my joy grew, my practice grew, and my appreciation for the blessings around me began to replace sorrow and worry. I read every spiritual teacher I could get my hands on and developed a strong understanding that all would be okay. Don't get me wrong, life continued to challenge my spiritual growth, and at some point I became aware that a continued quest for learning could just simply be an excuse for me not totally stepping into the arena of practicing everything I'd learned. It was time for me to completely merge my beliefs with my actions on a higher level, to really live what I knew. I spent a good number of years in this part of my cycle, living what I knew, experiencing every person and situation in my life as a divine gift, trying to always make my actions and words align with my thoughts and understandings, and life was magic, and it still is. However, since life doesn't stand still, and what works at one point begs to be moved beyond at another, I am now in a part of my life that in an ironic sort of way brings me back to the part of the cycle where I began 30 years ago. Long ago, unity came to me. I grabbed it and held on tight to its principles out of weakness and desperation, out of the need to heal myself. Now I live the unity principles from a position of strength, as an inseparable part of my heart. I no longer hold on to them for my own survival, but can now openly share them through my beingness with those around me, aware of how they can change the world. I've come full circle from what started as a practice to save my own inner self to one which celebrates the divine inner nature of all of us. By the way, recently, at the end of the service, when we were all standing in our little circle around saying the prayer for protection, I had a very simple yet very profound thought which connected this prayer for me for the first time with the fifth foundational principle. When we said, the light of God surrounds us, I am the light of God, the love of God enfolds us, I am the love of God, I am the power of God, I am the presence of God, I was struck with the thought that there might be no stronger affirmation of living the truth we know, the fifth principle, than really taking on the I am challenges stated in this prayer. So now my question is, do I claim this identity and live this identity, knowing that wherever I am, God is? I'm working on it. And all is well. Amen.
Thank you, Cindy.
My joy.
You know, just from the perspective of what we've heard from our Board of Trustees, hasn't this just been an amazing 5-week series? I'm really, you know, I knew what you were going to say, and I'm still really touched. Cindy spoke of her beingness and the strength of living from spiritual truth as a way to connect with and change herself and thereby the world. In chapter 5, Expressing God, Reverend Ellen puts it this way, and I quote, "Living the truth is more about being than doing. It's how we show up for whatever we choose to do, whether we are a business executive, stay-at-home mom, healer, teacher, or homeless wanderer. When we are living the truth, any action we take will be from a consciousness of spirit and oneness, with ego in service to soul." End quote. Consciousness and shifting it is something that we focus on a lot in Unity, and no wonder when the first 4 of our 5 foundational tenets are all about awareness. Arguably, our 5th principle is also based on awareness or consciousness and then action. Living the truth we know doesn't only mean physical action, and it definitely doesn't mandate making others do or be. This principle, like its companions, is about personal responsibility and individual accountability. We each are the point of power in that mix. Reverend Ellen offers 4 questions we might ask ourselves before deciding on a course of action. The questions that she poses are based on the first 4 principles. She calls them a handy checklist. In Reverend Ellen's words, first, do I affirm intelligence and love in this situation? Second, do I remember my own divinity and that of others involved? Third, do I take responsibility for attracting this situation into my experience and know that its outcome for me will match my thoughts and feelings about it? Fourth, have I aligned myself with God, the universe, the good, and received guidance before I act? Your answers will help you decide on your course of action, if any. Sometimes it is infinitely more difficult to wait to act. Others may seemingly judge you. I encourage you, stay your personal course of alignment with your truth. In June of 2012, following graduation from Unity Institute and my ordination by UWM, there were several things I knew. First, I had a beloved cat, Barkley, who was in the waning days of his life on earth. I wanted to care for him and show him unconditional love in those final days. Second, I looked at Unity Church openings for ministers without restricting location, and I knew I was not called to church ministry in any of them. And third, I knew I was called to apply for a newly created staff position in ministerial credentialing with Unity Worldwide Ministries right in Lee Summit, Missouri, where I was living. Outcomes? Well, I did apply for the UWM position, and it wasn't mine. I thought it was. I was like Deborah on that. But I came to know pretty quickly how blessed I was that I wasn't hired. In part, this was because Barkley's final days stretched out almost another full year. I cared for him. I showed him deep love to the moment that I released him from this life. It was a precious, special time that allowed me not only to grieve and celebrate him, but all the other cats that I have loved and lost. So I just stayed where I was in Lee Summit, and I looked like I wasn't taking any action on doing any ministry, and this continued for months into years. As for church ministry, well, I am standing before you as CCU Associate Minister. However, an important distinction, I am called to this community, not to be a church minister. And the seeming detour that brought me here was my offer to be of service to my father by moving to the coast of North Carolina so he can continue to live independently in his own home. And it looks like he's going to live forever. So I share this vignette with you about my life following seminary and my call to action, or perhaps better expressed as my call to inaction, to illustrate the point about staying your own course. I had to be willing to stay in the discomfort of not taking action until the time was right for me to do so. And I had many ministerial classmates who did not understand my seeming lack of activity. A few did. The majority did not. Most were not judgmental. They simply didn't get it. I mean, why go to seminary if not to become a church minister, they would ask. I couldn't give them a logical answer. I mean, it didn't really make any sense to me either, but it felt right. Others who were, and still are, part of my inner circle of friends were also concerned. And as the months went by, they began to express their concern in the form of pointed questions. Are you depressed? They would ask. Or what's next? Some of them, and some of my family members, came really close to judgment. I could feel myself getting defensive when I was fielding their questions. And that called for more prayer and meditation on my part. So I could then gently say no. And that, you'll be the first to know right after me when I know what's going on. In late summer of 2013, more than a year after graduation and ordination, I founded Leaning into Loss. This is a ministry that some of you are familiar with. It's dedicated to transforming our understanding and experience of loss and change, grief and bereavement. Through it, I visited Unity churches in California and throughout the Midwest and here in the Carolinas and in Virginia and West Virginia to offer retreats and workshops and Sunday lessons on what might be called human resilience. And it's a good thing that ministry is portable, since it was Easter of 2015 that I began my move from Missouri to North Carolina to support my dad. I made that move to be of service to my dad and our family. But it's no real surprise that I've been blessed by this decision over and over and over again. And not the smallest of those blessings is becoming part of this community. Reverend Ellen asks us, in a section titled Action versus Activism, to be mindful of whether we are giving our energy to resistance. Is our consciousness going toward supporting an issue, an idea, a candidate, a move, or are we against something, like the war on drugs, the war on poverty, or I support peace, the race for the cure, the right to free speech. For the first 6 months of my life here in North Carolina, I really was living in resistance. I saw my move as a temporary one, 1 year at the most. And as a result, I never really put my energy into the present. Why should I? Why would I? Since North Carolina was my temporary life. When I realized the limitations my focus was putting on that, I made a different choice. And I took action to be here in North Carolina, connected to my dad, and maybe more importantly to you, and to this beautiful place. Resistance can serve us when we notice it. And so now, I invite you to take a leap of faith with me. So far in our unity exploration on these 5 principles, we've been very mindful at looking at these principles from a God-first viewpoint. God is, I am, I create, I pray, I live. Does it matter if we change our lens? What happens if we turn our principles upside down? So what I mean by that is, let's start with, I live the truth I know. Does it work if we reverse the progression? I live, I pray, I create, I am, God is. I'm grateful to Reverend Donna Johnson, CEO and President of Unity Worldwide Ministries, for suggesting this inside-out approach. She offered that description, inside out, as a way of describing from moving individual to God, rather than God to individual. And I think it's an idea worth exploring. How about you? So the longer version in the upside down order would read this way. Knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, are not enough. A person must live the truth he or she knows. Prayer is creative thinking that heightens creation with God mind and therefore brings forth wisdom, healing, prosperity, and everything good.